Welcome to our final day of the 2021 UT Austin Portugal Annual Conference. Let's invite on stage Rui Oliveira, UT Austin Portugal's National Co-Director and Area Director for Advanced Computing in Portugal.
Hello everyone, and be very welcome to the second day of the UT Austin Portugal Conference. So we are all still learning how to do this again. So we have these hybrid events with not so many people present, but very good participants and interested participants. And as far as I know, yesterday we had more than 100 colleagues attending the roundtable, the fireshed online. So most probably that's what will happen today. Also, the program today is a bit different. So we'll start with a roundtable on health area with the theme an open space for scientific interdisciplinarity on health subjects. And this will be a plenary session. And then we'll have 5 parallel masterclasses. I will go through all of them. So one of them will be hybrid, so with people here at the auditorium and people elsewhere. And this one will be on the HPC area of the program, entitled Defining an HPC Open Ecosystem, where we are and how do we get there, okay? So this is on the HPC or Advanced Computing area. And then the other 4 will be fully online. One on the challenges of proton therapy in cancer treatment, research and clinical perspectives. The next one will be on the nanotechnologies area, on next generation batteries. The 4th one will be about the Azores region, so more on the health observation, a unique gateway to deep sea research in support of the UN Decade of Ocean Science and Sustainable Development. Okay? And finally, our 5th masterclass on the TIE area, from innovations to operations, the management of new technology implementations. Okay, so once again, welcome to the UT Austin Annual Conference, and make the best of it. Profit from the roundtable that we'll have right now, and then at 4 o'clock we'll start with the masterclasses. Okay. Thank you very much and enjoy.
Thank you for your words. We will now start our second roundtable of the conference.
Last year, COVID-19 taught us a lot about the importance of scientific collaboration in public health. The combat against the pandemic convoked experts from different backgrounds to a battlefield against an invisible and unpredictable enemy. In this battle, troops have not always converged on the tactics to defeat the virus. Was this a failure of interdisciplinarity? Or a reminder that interdisciplinarity is not a juxtaposition of layers of knowledge, but a robust integration of different views, anchoring on compromises to overcome tensions and tackle challenges whose solutions lie beyond the scope of a single discipline. Because health problems are multidimensional, health has long since been a fertile ground for interdisciplinary research, one that is substantially reliant on the intersection of various disciplines and paradigms. But what does it take to make the most of different perspectives and angles, however much they diverge, to advance medical science and medical health? Does navigating between disciplines to bring them closer together require constant explanation negotiation, and readjustment from involved actors? We will look into these topics and others with the help of leading minds from Portugal, UT Austin, and France. An unmissable roundtable with Miguel Coimbra, coordinator of Inesc Tech for Health, Carol Lang, Rui Souza, Mireille Pollan, and Arlindo Oliveira, setting the tone of a conversation where health challenges intersect with machine learning, nanotechnology, physics, and Earth observation. Curious?
This roundtable will be moderated by Miguel Coimbra, who we now call on stage. Miguel is the coordinator of Inesc Tech for Health. Currently, he leads and collaborates in numerous international projects in the areas of cardiology and gastroenterology. Miguel, the stage is yours now.
We'll have 4 presentations from our 4 guests, around 10 minutes each. I will present each one individually, and then we'll all join together for a roundtable where we'll discuss these important issues. Okay? And so, given that, to start, I will immediately present our first guest. And today, for the first intervention, we have Professor Carol Lang, an experimental particle physicist of the Jane and Roland Bloomberg Professor of Physics at the University of Texas at Austin. So Lang studies neutrino interactions and oscillations and investigates if neutrinos and antineutrinos represent the same fundamental field by searching for neutrino-less double beta decays. The time-of-flight PET for proton therapy UT Austin Portugal Project is a spin-off of this research that includes building state-of-the-art particle detectors. Okay, so we're now joining Texas. Welcome, Carol Lang.
Thank you very much, Miguel. I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me here and giving me the opportunity to present our project and participate in a broader discussion. My title, Antimatter That Matters, may be a little bit cryptic, so I'll try to tell you a brief story about particle physics coming from neutrinos to positrons, which are anti-electrons, thus antimatter, and how they impact our imaging of brains. Our research is rooted in basic experimental particle physics. Many of you know it perhaps as high energy physics, or HEP. And our group most recently has been working on 2 fundamental questions involving neutrinos: role of neutrinos in the universe that is, for unknown to us reasons, dominated by matter, and are neutrinos and antineutrinos really the same or different particles? On the right, you have a modern table of elements, which includes quarks, 6 quarks, and 6 leptons. And among these leptons, there are neutrinos. And these are the particles that actually fill the universe. There's lots of them in the universe, and we study them, but they're very weakly interacting particles and very hard to study. The table concludes with so-called interacting bosons, which represent or carry forces between the particles, and the famous Higgs boson that is central to this standard model of elementary particles. And in the bottom, we have the map of the evolution, or image of the evolution of the universe since the Big Bang until now. And we do not know how come in early stages of this evolution, the universe became completely matter dominated and antimatter seemed to be almost not there. Our endeavors, which are represented by this aerial at Fermi National Laboratory near Chicago, took us from large scale experiments, which I will show you images of in just a moment, where we designed and fabricated new instrumentation, developed novel ideas for analysis, and that has led us to many interesting observations, discoveries. Neutrino oscillations is a a new phenomenon discovered only about 22 years ago. And we've worked in large collaborations. Multiple source of funding was necessary for it. And there's a list here that includes US and European agencies that are listed there. In all our endeavors, medical nuclear imaging has been close to our technical expertise and on our minds. And in fact, we've started this 20 years ago, but not much has happened then, but only recently we've ventured into a more specific project. These are still illustrations of the tool of our trade. So on the left is a so-called magnetic horn. This is quite a big beast, as you can see. That is one of the elements to make a neutrino beam. On the right is an experiment that no longer is taking data, but it was deep underground, and you see the size of it, and the mass of this detector is measured in thousands of tons. And they are made, these detectors, or such detectors, are made out of smaller elements that you see here in the right bottom corner, which have so-called scintillation elements and photodetectors. So
Professor
that the
Carol
image
Lang?
of, yes?
Sorry, apologies. The slides are not changing. I apologize for interrupting you. But I know the presentation because I know these slides, but they are not changing. So we're still in the initial slide, and they're really nice slides. They help to understand. So
how about now?
They are changing. Thank you very much. Sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, so I was urged to put it in the presentation mode that apparently didn't work. Okay, I apologize, and these are the images again. So let me rewind a little bit. This is the table of elements that I was referring earlier to: quarks, leptons, and neutrinos, and these interacting bosons. This is the image of the evolution of the universe since the Big Bang to our present times. And as I say, in early stages, we developed this asymmetry between content of the universe as far as matter, antimatter. And this is the aerial view of the experiment, one of the neutrino experiments at Fermi National Laboratory, where we were sending neutrinos through the Earth, 700 kilometers through the Earth, to study how they transform from initial source to where they were detected deep underground. So these are the elements of this research, experimental elements. This is, as I mentioned, magnetic horn. That is element that is used to make a beam, a neutrino beam. This is a detector deep underground, and you see the image is showing a detector that is 8 meters in height. Its mass is measured in thousands of tons. And in the bottom corner here, again, these are the scintillation elements that make parts of these detector and photodetectors that detect light. So when neutrinos interact, we see these streaks of light, and we actually can image the detector interaction of the neutrinos in the detector. So this is actually close to what so-called positron emission tomography accomplishes, which is a technique that was invented about half a century ago, more than that. And PET, positron emission tomography, images molecular concentration of injected positron emitting antimatter radiopharmaceuticals. And an example of such radiopharmaceutical is a sugar that is doped with fluorine 18. So the image on the right shows the principle of this technique. If you inject a radiopharmaceutical into a body, wherever it concentrates, it emits positrons, and positrons immediately annihilate and emit two gammas. And these gammas have to be back to back from the conservation of momentum and energy. And we can actually, if we surround the body with detectors that can detect these gammas, we can actually, through the line of response, tell where it was coming from, which line. If you make many of such reconstructions, so this is the principle of tomography, which you see in the bottom here, you can actually accomplish the imaging of the entire region where the activity is occurring. This additional lines, yellow lines, in fact, show the improvement that the imaging is getting when you employ the timing information, the tight timing information about when these events are occurring or how these gammas are reaching the detectors. And that improves the image quality, which here on the left is an example, not ours. It's taken from a publication that's cited below, but that's the goal, more or less, of PET imaging. So images signify activity of cancer tissues. However, PET has potential for diagnosing many other brain disorders, traumatic brain injury, Alzheimer's, in fact, COVID, and there are lots of other applications that are being still developed. Well, our project that we are engaged in is actually involving one additional very important element of future cancer treatment. And this is so-called proton, or sometimes also ion, cancer therapy. Conventional radiation therapy uses X-rays, typically called gamma rays. Protons and ions provide higher precision and much less collateral damage of healthy tissues. So if you compare it to chemotherapy, in chemotherapy, you basically are sometimes it's referred as a carpet bombing. Here, the bombing with protons is very precise and can be, we could avoid damaging healthy tissues. This is considered by many to be the future of radiation therapy. The question is, how effective is it? The image in the bottom is telling us the difference in the energy deposition between conventional gamma rays, which you see doesn't effectively end anywhere, and is as far as the penetration depth. So it keeps on going and it can damage healthy tissues, while protons and ions, typically maybe carbon nuclei, like the one here marked in yellow, deposit energy towards the end of their trajectory. So this is the precision of just a millimeter or two that can be accomplished in principle. This technique was suggested by R.R. Wilson, again, a long time ago. Robert Wilson was a particle physicist and experimentalist and accelerator builder. He was, in fact, the first director of Fermi National Laboratory. And just to give you a context, currently there are about only 110 facilities worldwide, but there are 50 more under construction, 30 in the planning stages of just next few years. And this is, as I say, by many considered to be the future of radiation therapy. It's extremely complex and expensive. Facilities are very cumbersome and very complex. So treatments are also complex, but it saves lives. And the graph below shows the growth, rapid growth of the number of treatments that is happening in the world. And as you can see from the from both curves, this treatment is rapidly increasing. So what we do here at UT Austin and collaborating with PETSys Electronics, LIP, IST, ICNASH, and MD Anderson in Houston is we're building a PET, it's called scanner or PET camera, that will be moved to, so this is a head surrounded by two wings of the PET scanner, which is built out of these smaller elements that intercept the photons, the gammas, and turn them into light. And from that light, we can get the line of response and again image the activity in the brain. This will be employed not for clinical activities, clinical use yet, But you see here images of our trial installation of our still empty detector at MD Anderson. So this is a proton facility. This is where treatment is actually being conducted, and we will install our detector there. And you see our crew that visited there and is making sure that what we are assembling in Austin will fit in Houston. So this brief story, we're not done yet. We are constructing these detectors, or this detector, two main elements. And there's lots of software involved in image reconstruction, but we're not there yet. But this is happening very rapidly now. And it illustrates that physics continues bringing new ideas and instrumentation into medicine. It is explicitly multidisciplinary, or some call it interdisciplinary endeavor. It improves therapeutics and diagnostics, typically nowadays called theranostics, but it doesn't come easy. I think that coming from basic research into very practical and patient, close to patient treatment culture is very different. These different cultures maybe don't clash, but they don't easily mesh. In fact, discussing it with our colleagues in Europe and in the US, we know that there are also country dependencies of how the two cultures interact. There's unfortunately limited overlapping expertise of this multidisciplinary activity.
Professor Carol Eng. Hi,
yes?
So this is Miguel. This is an excellent slide, but maybe this is the kind of things we can leave for the roundtable, because that's exactly what we would like to discuss. Sounds good?
Sure. So, absolutely.
Right.
You're the boss, so I'll follow what
Thank you.
Like.
Well,
So
thank you.
Thank you. I can bring it up to our discussion, and this will be the end. This was my last slide.
Okay, I'll be the first one to ask questions in the roundtable, because I think your last slide is a great kickstart for the discussion that ensues. So, Professor Carol Eng from UT Austin, thank you very much, Carol. And now for our second guest today. We're not used to clapping anymore. We need to clap more now that at least hybrid we do this, and hopefully physically and presentially more and more and more. Let's go for our second guest of this afternoon. So Rui Sousa, Engineer Rui Sousa, is the CEO of STEM Matters, a Portuguese biotechnology company operating in cell-based tissue and blood-derived therapeutic products. He holds a PhD in mechanical engineering and an MSc in business administration. Rui Sousa's work focuses on regenerative medicine and tissue engineering, with a scientific production exceeding 70 papers in scientific journals. Rui, thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation to be here. It's actually an honor to be here and speaking with you and sharing with you at least what I believe it's a practical perspective of the Sentinel Project, a project that we are currently leading in the scope of UT Austin Portugal Program, but also trying to substantiate the interplay of this specific project and its contribution to our company strategy. Okay, just a few slides about what is STEM Matters. Actually, we are a company, we are a private company working in regenerative medicine for the last years. We are mostly operating as a contract development manufacturing organization, and we are serving customers specifically on very specific product verticals, and we have been building a portfolio of projects and products that are meant to supply the regenerative medicine industry that is very vital not only to our existence, but has very long-term growth perspectives for the coming years. And we do three things, and one of these three things is intrinsically related with our motivation to participate and lead the Sentinel Project. We develop and manufacture experimental medicinal products, so these are medicinal products that are not yet commercially available, for which we have the capabilities of analytical development, manufacturing process development, but also to implement exactly the same methods that we've developed into a GMP setting and actually release these products for human application. We are focused on three main areas. It's advanced therapies, complex biologicals, but a specific area deals with raw materials. And raw materials are the basic building blocks on top of which we are able to develop and manufacture medicinal products, but also medical devices. And actually, within medical devices, we had been working in the last years in the development of new chemical entities that could be used to formulate either combination products, advanced therapy medicinal products, but could be used really as a backbone for formulating medical devices, and medical devices that are implantable, that are meant to last and function inside the human body. And in that regard, we have been working with a platform from which we are able to generate multiple chemical entities. And these chemical entities not only are able to grant us composition of matter, substantiate intellectual property position, and actually exploit these chemical entities in a myriad of different applications. But for you to have an idea, and probably this is relevant to cross with the other areas that are explored within the scope of the Sentinel project, our strategy is rather simple. We explore a common molecular chassis that we optimize, we rationally design, and then we are able to generate a large number of compounds that then, because of their physicochemical but also biological properties, are able to be tuned to specific applications. And these find an application ground in areas like advanced therapies, as I mentioned to you before, implantable medical devices, and hopefully also an area that is very scarce in terms of product approval. It's implantable biosensors. And this is really the intersection of our strategy with a project such as Sentinel. And actually, the Sentinel project, the idea is very appealing, at least in our perspective, because Sentinel project is rooted on development of a minimally invasive and implantable biosensor that could be used to monitor the progression of a specific tumor in patients that are, of course, stratified. And there are several types of solid tumors that could not be easily extracted from the patient, but could benefit of a specific monitoring. So in that regard, the Sentinel project is meant to develop a new generation of biocompatible and implantable formulations based on our technology, to develop really the encapsulation protocols for us to combine plasmonic particles in order to generate a spectra upon through the use of an external device that could actually trigger a monitoring mechanism able to detect any variation in the biochemistry surrounding the specific biosensor. And actually it's very interesting because we are talking about an implantable and injectable formulation that is put under the skin, and by using of an external device and through acquisition of a Raman spectra signaling, we are able to detect variations in the surrounding composition, and hopefully correlated this variation in biochemistry with specific biomarkers that could be used as analogs to validate our technology. But more interestingly is if we are able to render this spectra in a very easy method, we may be also able to couple the use of this technology with machine learning that are able to analyze the spectra and hopefully define specific diagnostic criteria that could be used to trigger a medical decision by a physician. And with this, I think the Sentinel project is highly appealing, but we believe that is truly rooted on the intersection of very distinct scientific and technical disciplines. because we are talking about materials, we are talking about plasmonic nanoparticles, we are talking about biosensors, medical devices, Raman spectroscopy, machine learning. We are talking about a myriad of technologies and approaches that, of course, create challenges from implementation standpoint. And I think it's rather obvious what is really one of the motivations for us to lead the project is because we believe that formulation through the development of new chemical entities could actually be used as enabling technology. We don't have established technologies for implantable medical devices, okay? The availability of off-the-shelf solution is rather scarce. And so we are talking in addressing a market that we are not necessarily addressing, but for which we are estimating a growth in terms of relative economic importance. And of course, we are also hoping that many of the candidates that we are generating throughout the Sentinel project could have spillovers applications in other indications that are not necessarily as a medical devices, but the requirements for me to use it from a regulatory standpoint in a human are very similar. So there are some synergies to explore. So under the scope of the Sentinel project, there is really old-fashioned chemical optimization of chemical compounds in order to elicit formulations that are injectable, implantable, but also that are able to encapsulate plasmonic nanoparticles that carry a certain risk from a biological perspective. And so what we have came to develop are injectable formulations that are able to have a specific signaling under a specific biological context. And we are integrating that with a handheld device in order to acquire the spectra, but also developing with collaboration with our UT Austin, developing protocols for analyzing those same spectra that we're acquiring from the implanted biosensor. We are going to start in vitro, ex vivo, and also ex vivo development and proof of concept using the biosensor that was developed under the scope of the Sentinel project. And one of the ways that we established really to align expectations and really address some of the challenges in the project was early on trying to come up with a very specific target product profile for our product. In addition to that definition of the target product profile, really address the regulatory classification from a medical device standpoint that I think it's very important for people to understand the boundaries in terms of product development, but also the application of the product in a regulated environment. Sorry. And also really trying to define as early as on a potential roadmap for non-clinical and clinical development. There is some practical insights on what we feel that is the perspective on interdisciplinarity. I don't know if you want me to address, Miguel, or if you'd like me to leave it.
Maybe we can leave it for the discussion, Rui. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Rui Souza, CEO of STEM Matters, and here with us today the vision of industry and academia together for our nice discussion and these 4 presentations. And we'll move now to France. So we have the US, now Portugal, and now France. And I'll introduce our third guest, Michael Pollan, engineer Michael Pollan. He's an engineer at the Centre National d'Études Spatiales. She has coordinated CNES's participation in the Committee on Earth Observation Satellites and was the project manager of the PEPS project. So that's the French platform for the distribution of Sentinel satellite products. In 2021, Michael joined the Earth Observation Department as the Health and Forest Program Manager. She is working on close collaboration with the French scientific community and is currently supporting the development of Tele Epidemiology. Thank you, Michael, for being with us today, and welcome.
Thank you for giving me the chance to present you CNES activities in Tele Epidemiology. Tele Epidemiology is the result of more than 20 years of work of a small CNES team and its collaborator. Earth observation meets health, it gives the Tele Epidemiology. So I would like to give you a few words to give an idea of what is Tele Epidemiology and more precisely only the process and why interdisciplinarity is important. Next slide, please. Looking at the context, the world is changing. Already in 2012, the French Senate report identified the climate change as one of the main factors in the emergence of infectious diseases. And in the same way, the environment is integrated now into the holistic vision of the health, with also the One Health concept, and which bring us to the Tele Epidemiology. Next slide, please. Sorry. Next slide, please. Oh, thank you. So a quick definition: Tele Epidemiology analyzes environment health relationships between the emergence and spread of disease and climate and environment changes based on space technology from Earth observation satellite, and those diseases are linked to vector, water, or air. Next slide, please. So by construction, teleepidemiology involves various disciplines such as humanities and social science, microbiology, entomology, veterinary, of course, remote sensing, but any other disciplines that might be needed to give another point of view, another angle on the object of the study. And this part constitutes the scientist community, which is one of the three groups of actors important in the teleepidemiology concept. The users to define the needs, of course, to use the service, but it is not so trivial, maybe. Then the operator to produce in an optimized way the expected results, and then the scientist to build the tool and the services. And it is more a question we will see about cross-disciplinarity more than multidisciplinarity. Next slide, please. Regarding the process is all along the project with all these actors. It is in 3 steps. First, we have to understand the mechanism promoting the emergence and the propagation of the infectious disease. Then we have to develop the adapted product integrating remote sensing from space. And then we can develop the predictive model for risk mapping. Next slide, please. So teleepidemiology is based on co-creation between space actors and Earth actors. Altogether, we have to listen, to understand, and to know what we can do, but also what we can't, where and what are our limits. Then we have to observe, build and understand multidisciplinary field data set, and diagnose to identify the system keys, physical, biological, and socioeconomic factors linked to the disease. Teleepidemiology is dynamic. And because of this, it is a question of space and time, remote sensing is part of the answer. The answer to what is the risk level, where is it, when, and for how long. So we take into account environmental as well as economical and social factors, and we have to use space sensors with the adequate spatiotemporal performance regarding resolution, repetitiveness, sensibility, and so on, to monitor the environmental parameters relevant to the emergence and spread of disease. And last but not least, it is based on contribution. We have to be close to the users to ensure the use of the dynamic high spatio-temporal resolution risk map we have to produce. By building a model combining in situ data, remote sensing products from Earth observation satellites, and also geographic and meteorological data. Next slide, please. Sorry. So here, very quickly, a case study regarding the Rift Valley fever in Senegal, only 2 words. One, for the context, because it is a viral disease, causes huge economic losses in livestock. It is due to 2 types of mosquitoes, Aedes vexans and Culex poecilipes, and it is directly linked to the dynamic of ponds and the rainfall event. The other word, it is for the actors. Here we have for the scientists, entomologists from Institute Pasteur in Dakar. And regarding the mosquito behavior, the life cycle, for example, we have to know there is no mosquitoes further than 500 meters from their ponds, and they have, the 2 species have different behavior, quite opposite. Regarding, for example, the lay place, the lay location, the weather condition, the period of the season, the preferences in terms of vegetation and water turbidity. We have also the veterinarians regarding the pastoral life and the use of parks, the hydrologists regarding the model to modelize the filling and the emptying ponds, and of course the remote sensing specialists to build new indicators, adapted indicators, and the global model and tool. The operator is the Dakar Ecological Monitoring Center with meteo and climate specialists, and the user, the Directorate Veterinary Services. All those actors work together to produce the decision and tools which is operational since 2018 and improve the animal health management strategy. Next slide, please. Sorry for losing time. So just some specificity of Tele Epidemiology. You will understand that it is to help health actors to know where and when to intervene. It is not easy, it is difficult to access thematic data, so we bring the environmental observation to health data. There you have to know there is not a specific space mission dedicated to Earth, but we use all the other Earth observation product mission. Health problems are complex, diverse, and with specificities. Many environmental factors are involved in the mechanism of the transmission and the propagation, and also there is many local characteristics. For example, malaria in Brazil is not the same than malaria in West and South Africa. And we would like also to go from local to global scale, but the model at local level must be adapted to be applied in a different place. So it is very difficult. Next slide, please. Maybe to finish, to conclude, the Tele Epidemiology calls for strong cross-disciplinarity based on a large network of partners from various disciplines. It involves integrative way of thinking. It is based on a co-creation process, of course, and concentrated effort from people able to cross borders, both specialized and generalists, who are curious and non in a hierarchical organization and non in a competition mode. So we can ask ourselves how to form this kind of team, because that we know it takes time and money, and we need also physical contact. Next slide, please. That's the end. Thank you very much for your attention, and my special thanks to Andrea.
Well, thank you, Mireille, for your presentation and your resilience. We're talking about resilience. Survived the presentation, and it was excellent. Thank you so much. And so many challenges there in Tele Epidemiology. And we'll continue a little bit on epidemiology, but now we're going to look at how to use advanced data science for that too. And for that, I'll invite our fourth guest for today. Professor Arlindo Oliveira is a professor at the Department of Computer Science and Engineering at Instituto Superior Técnico, president of INESC, and member of the board of Caixa Geral de Depósitos. He is also a member of the Portuguese Academy of Engineering and a senior member of the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineering, IEEE. Arlindo has also worked at CERN, INESC IDE, and Cadence Laboratories. His main areas of interest include machine learning, algorithms and complexity, bioinformatics, and digital circuit design. Thank you very much for being here with us, Arlindo, and the floor is yours.
I will describe briefly. I mean, this is a work that is much more academic in the sense that this is certainly not a final product or a large project like some of the ones that were presented here. It was an effort that we did in order to, I mean, at the top of the pandemic, we wanted to see whether we could improve the provisions that were being made about the evolution of the pandemic. So the objective was exactly that, to model the spatial temporal evolution of COVID-19 in Portugal. We had several data points. So we had the incidence rate by municipality that was made available by the GS, the Portuguese unit, Portuguese agency that handles healthcare. We had mobility data that was made available by a telecommunications operator, and the objective was also to integrate this mobility data into the predictions. And we had some global statistics about the pandemic that were made public also by the GS. So what we did, so we started with these incidence risk maps. There was a previous work by some of the co-authors that basically took the municipality level incidence rate in the country and was able to compute the incidence rate for each location in the country, and location using a 2x2 kilometers square grid. So we had this temporal series, and the objective was to see whether we could predict the evolution of this temporal series of the incidence rate. This is an example of a particular incidence rate, municipality level incidence rate on a particular day. The method that extrapolates from the incidence rate at the municipality level to the incidence rate at the geographic level used a process formed Kriging, which I will not explain in detail, but basically interpolates between known points. This is just a one-dimension interpolation using Kriging, but you can do this in 2 dimensions, which was what we did. And so with this data, we basically proceeded to model the spatial temporal evolution of the pandemic in Portugal. So what we had was this sort of maps. You can see the particular incidence rate, the cumulative incidence rate, 14 days cumulative incidence rates in the different regions of Portugal. We can see the evolution in time of this, right? So we had data for the first year of the pandemic, and we basically tried to make the predictions 1 week and 2 weeks ahead of this data to see whether we could predict with any reasonable accuracy that the evolution of the pandemic. We used 3 baseline models that looked reasonable to make this prediction. The first one was a municipality level seared model, which is a standard compartmental model that was followed by the same Kriging process to go from the municipality level to the geographical level. Then we also applied municipality level ARMA and VAR models. I will just describe in slightly not much detail in the next slide. And again, we used kriging to go to geographical model. Understand that this process of using kriging from the municipality level model to the detailed geographical level was the same procedure that was used to obtain the reference data, which meant that somehow these three models, the compartmental model, the ARM and the VAR models, should be well placed to do good predictions because they were using exactly the same mechanism to go from the municipality level to geographical level. And then we had some previous experience with a particular model of neural network called the STS-ConvNet, which was used, we have used to do other sort of predictions like rain, the evolution of rain patterns in South America and other weather-related predictions. And we use this particular model to try to predict the evolution of the pandemic given the previous time series at the geographical level. So what I will just describe, I won't describe in any detail actually any of the approaches. Just let you know that the ARM and VAR models are well-known models from statistics. The ARM model just takes into account the previous values, the time series in that particular municipality, so it ignores the values in the other municipalities. The VAR model, on the contrary, is more powerful, but it also has more parameters in that it takes into account the evolution of the pandemic in all the municipalities in the country when predicting each one of them. Standard statistical approaches to estimate the parameters involved in the ARM and the VAR models have been used. Then we used what is probably the most common model to use to model the evolution of pandemics, which is a standard compartmental series model. I guess many people will be familiar with this, but basically people are put into one of four compartments. They are either susceptible, infected, recovered, or dead, right? And there are transition rates between these compartments that are estimated from the numbers in the pandemic. We use these compartmental models at the municipality level to predict the particular evolution in each municipality. This is actually the models that have been used to predict the evolution at the national level. This more detailed modeling at the municipality level enabled us to get much more, much finer information about the incidence risk in the country. So what did we and of course we use this ST-Conv network, which is basically a neural network that has some convolutional levels and some fully connected levels. This is the overall architecture of the network. So the input is the sequence of previous incidence levels, in this case, 2 weeks in the past. And then the network is trained to predict. It was trained during the first 6 months, and then it was left to run by itself in the second 6 months of the pandemic. The data I'm going to show you are on the next 6 months. Now, I mean, on the 6 months that the network had not been trained. So it was tested on 6 months of data that was not used to train the model. You can see here the results of the 4 models. We use two error measures, the SMAP and the more standard root mean squared error. Both provided the same result. Darker here means higher error, and you can see that the ST-Conv has by a significant amount less error in the prediction. This is, of course, the prediction for one particular day in this 6 months period. It is just to illustrate, but you can see that there are significant differences in the level of error of the neural network model compared with the other models when you are predicting 1 week ahead. The actual numbers tell more clear picture. You can see here in green, I believe the lower curve is in this case the root mean squared error of the ST-Conv model, clearly on the lower range of these errors. You can also see here as the errors of the other models go up much faster and higher in the last 2 to 3 months of the period, which included December of 2020 and January and February of 2021, which also coincided, as you remember, with the peaks of the pandemic in Portugal. So the models did not, in general, do very well at predicting, but actually the ST Convest US did a much better job. The other measure, the SMAP, also tells basically the same story. The ST Convest US is better at predicting. Actually, all the models keep learning as they go along. So as we go along, the models are, of course, retrained on the previous data. So all the models keep learning and improving as we go along. But the ST Convest US is the best one. The actual numbers for this basically just clarify this thing. You can see that the last row, the ST Convest US, has a much lower root mean squared error in SMAP, both when doing a prediction 7 days ahead and when doing a prediction 10 days ahead. And this is basically what I wanted to share with you. It was an interesting experience in the prediction of the evolution of the pandemics. Hopefully this pandemic is mostly gone in Portugal by now, hopefully, and we'll not need to use this model for this particular one, but it's good to know that these models are good at predicting the evolution of the pandemics, taking into account the geographic relations between municipalities and cities and so on. We did try to improve this with mobility data. It did not work out. So the mobility data that we obtained from the telecommunications operator did not improve the results. It basically was the same results, so it did not include the mobility data in the model. But the hope was that it would help, but it didn't. Possibly because the mobility that we had does not tell you whether the people are going to places whether there are lots of people where they are going to the countryside. So it just tells you the absolute values of the mobility, which were probably not good enough. We are still thinking of considering that additional information, but the results that we obtained was that the mobility data was not particularly useful in the prediction of the pandemics. Also, probably because the people restrict themselves ahead of the evolution of the pandemic. So there's some discussion to be held here why the mobility data was not particularly useful. This was, of course, not work. Oh, there's a website for this. There's a website in technical for this, where you can see not only the evolution of the incidence rates in the country, but also the prediction of the evolution. And this, of course, was not only my work. It was a team that included these 8 co-authors, professors and researchers at Technical. This is work that was submitted. There is a preprint if you look it up. There is a preprint available, and there's also a website where you can see the models, download the data if you want to have a shot at predicting the evolution yourself. So we made available the data for the incidence rates for each location in the country for the first month of the pandemic. Thank you. This is what I wanted to share with you. Thank you for the opportunity, and I'm available to answer any questions or any points you may want to make.
Okay, thank you. Arlindo? So Professor Arlindo Oliveira from Instituto Superior Técnico, and after these 4 presentations, I was writing here some notes like scanning and radiation treatment, implantable biosensors, remote sensing for epidemiology, advanced data science for epidemiology, so a lot of variety and clear cases of multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary. So it's a nice motto for the discussion. I already cheated and asked for a little bit of overtime to organization so we can speak just a little bit between such a fascinating panel. And to start, so like I said before, the goal was to discuss a little bit. We have this motto, interdisciplinary, as a way to build up resilience. Does it apply to health? Let's discuss this very briefly, and then exploit the excellent experience of these 4 talks that we have discussed, that we heard just now. So we see challenges to that interdisciplinarity, and hopefully a couple of strategies that we can take home and also attempt to use them to deal with our own interdisciplinary projects. So one way to start is, well, what's that? Resilience. So if we go to the Oxford Languages Dictionary, the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties, or toughness. Well, quickly, obviously, is relative. We're thinking cancer, so that's, well, if it's a decade, we're fine. We're thinking adapting to climate change, maybe a little longer, and then we see a stronger definition of quickly, like COVID-19, a dramatic pandemic that we are still experiencing. Okay, so here's the motto. So let's then start with the first challenge here, and which is, does interdisciplinarity lead to resilience? Let's discuss it. And while our guests try to think who is going to volunteer first, otherwise I'll do my job and just call some of them, I would like to challenge all our viewers back at home, so you can ask questions. Obviously, we don't have a tremendous amount of time, but I'll promise to look at them and try to include as many as possible here if we have time. So, but please participate, at least offline. We'll share them with all the guests. Okay. So let's start then. Who wants to be the first victim and discuss this? If we phrase it like that, does interdisciplinarity lead to resilience? And we think health. How shall we ponder on this question? Well, we had some discussions before. We all know each other, and I'll then challenge Arlindo, because I think he has a pretty interesting view regarding this.
So, one of the first things that has become more clear in the last decades or so is that most innovation comes from interdisciplinary work. So it's harder and harder to advance the state of the art in specific and very narrow fields. Of course, luckily we keep doing that, but it's harder and harder. There is a lot more low-hanging fruit from work in interdisciplinary fields. We heard here about the application of particle physics to health, to diagnosis, and to cancer treatment, a very interesting presentation. We also have a plan to install a high-end treatment facility in Lisbon, in Técnico, because we have a significant expertise in these fields. And there is a plan to build an accelerator that indeed uses our knowledge about particle physics and physics to the health area. And of course, these interconnections between computer science, artificial intelligence, and challenges in the health area are much better dealt by interdisciplinary teams than by very specialized single discipline teams. So I think that what we heard here today and in general, I think this ability to combine knowledge from different fields makes indeed for a society that is able to answer faster the challenges that show up, and that hopefully will enable us to handle even better the next pandemic, right? There will be a next pandemic. I think in this particular one, we were very successful in what regards the technology of vaccines. I think it beat all my expectations in terms of getting the vaccines to work and then getting people vaccinated. Portugal is, of course, one of the countries, if not the country, with better vaccination rates. But I think in other fields of response to the pandemic, we were not so successful. I mean, even the modeling, what I saw was general confusion. There were literally thousands of approaches to model this pandemic. And I know that the approach I just presented is just one more of those thousands. I'm making no point that this is particularly solid or strong. But I mean, nobody knew where the pandemic was going. We were surprised by the evolution of the pandemic in general. And I think in the next pandemic, hopefully with what we learned from this one, also with better data and better technologies, we'll be able to handle it better and to model it better and to know in advance something that we didn't know, what were the right measures, what were the wrong measures, what were the excessive measures that were taken and the ones that were not strong enough. So I think we need to cooperate between different fields, and I think that will enable us to handle better the next pandemic challenge, and hopefully also other challenges that come from other areas, in particular the climate challenge.
Arlindo, thank you very much. So we reinforce the idea that interdisciplinary, especially for these global challenges, is paramount. Obviously not enough. We need additional things, but it's possibly a necessary condition. And I think it would be very interesting to have a more industry view regarding this. Does industry think the same? This is the word of an academic, right? a company needs to be resilient, not only the planet, our society, but the company needs to be resilient. How do you perceive interdisciplinary, because you're doing health technology, as part of your company?
I totally agree that most of the, many of the recent innovations that we have seen in healthcare and health-related domains are interdisciplinarity. It's interdisciplinarity at its best. So it was based on the intersection of different domains. And one thing is really to come up with an innovation, okay? And we feel that, so it's not so much difficult to establish a proof of concept based on the intersection of different fields. The challenge then comes into the realization or into conversion of that same innovation in a product that is, that is applying patients, that reaches the market, and then complexity really may not be necessarily something easy to implement. And I like very much from a strategic standpoint the intersection of different areas of knowledge, and I think, you can sustain differentiation by intersecting different areas of knowledge and coming up with certain innovations. The question is from a product development perspective, then the strength of that innovation is as strong as the weakest link in the development chain. And sometimes because of the intersection of innovation, it's very, very difficult to develop knowledge that is not shallow at the beginning. It's because you are at the forefront in developing knowledge in a certain field. And actually, from a company that works in healthcare and health-related domains, there is also regulation. And in many cases, regulation is not necessarily a very good motivator to innovation. So you have to couple really the transdisciplinarity with the regulatory context, the product development context, and then the challenges really appear. And it may be not necessarily to convert innovation based on transdisciplinarity into a product or a successful outcome. And for a business such as the business that we operate in, we have to take that into account.
Okay, thank you. So this is very interesting, a broader perspective of interdisciplinarity. So a lot of times we think interdisciplinarity as technical fields, more engineering, physics, technology fields, but we see here that we require a larger interdisciplinarity. We need business models, we need regulation, we need etc. So there are even more disciplines than simply that, and we've seen examples that immediately touch into public policy. For example, Tele Epidemiology, the COVID-19 situation. So yes, it is needed, and interdisciplinary helps hopefully to build resilience, but you need to think of a broad, if you're thinking health, a broad interdisciplinary factor here. So a lot of things can make interdisciplinarity difficult. Rui has already listed a few: regulation and other variations, the market. But one thing we would like to approach here that we all feel, either in industry, academic, in policy, which is communication. Communication is hard between fields, okay? We might be all very strong at our own specific fields, but we see that a huge and a strong barrier to achieving interdisciplinary here is communication. So we have 4 examples here of interdisciplinarity, and maybe we should use that accumulated experience to be the founding stone to discuss this. And now I'll challenge Carol, because Carol, I'm sorry, you're the first that I interrupted. Then, for all fairness, I interrupted some other people, but you were exactly starting to talk precisely about this, right?
Indeed. Would you like me to share my slides or just speak to the topic? That's fine. I'll just follow
a few topics there.
And I started discussing. So we come to this field really from basic physics research to something that touches human lives and health, and it's quite distant endeavors. And indeed, there's a huge difference in the approaching how you deal with the issue at the medical on the medical field. So there's a relatively small overlap cultural-wise between what physicists do and what medical doctors, radiologists, or even medical physicists do. And that is not easy to bridge. However, it's happening. You know, I'm very optimistic that people are ultimately intelligent and know how to make it happen. But there are challenges to start to speak the same language and to develop the same understanding of what is needed and how it's being applied. One of the fundamental, I think, to me as a newcomer to the field, one of the fundamental differences that I found was that in high-energy physics, all ideas are essentially in public domain. Everybody wants to share and be the first to cry what you or she have found. That's not actually what's happening in medical applications. A lot of people play in small teams. They are paranoid about patenting things. They're paranoid about protecting their IP, and this was and is a big surprise to me. And I think that one of the biggest challenges, how to move forward without both, I think, destroying the IP. I think we want to preserve it, we want to protect it, but there should be an easier way or a more open way of sharing the information between different technical teams. There is a very big difference when radiologists or medical physicists work and perhaps try to do research, because they are closely tied to specific health issues of specific people. When we conduct research, we effectively play in a sandbox, and it's isolated. It doesn't affect anybody's life, and bridging these two endeavors is very challenging. How to make it happen? It is happening, but it's challenging.
So communication even between technical specialists, but if they're from different fields, and here we have physics and many more in your project, even between those people creating the product. We're not even talking now about regulators and policymakers and etc. Doctors, we still haven't discussed, even mentioned doctors, right? But between those technical specialities, you know, Carol is sharing here with us that this is, we're still not going for the answers. We'll have a few, hopefully, but these can happen even between technical fields. I'll once again move back to Rui and challenge Rui Souza here, the industry, because, well, if our papers fail, well, we'll write another paper. If a company fails, well, that's game over. So what is the strategy? We've already understood that you have this multi and interdisciplinarity there. What is the strategy used to overcome this communication barrier, these differences that appear within your team, your company, and your clients, and your etc., and your ecosystem?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and I haven't found yet the definitive answer to it. One thing that we use, and that I like to use, at least for the people that work with me, it's really about trying to define a compelling narrative to align expectations and communication within a team that is eclectic in nature, because people have different backgrounds, they have different scientific and technical backgrounds. Some people are more business oriented. Even the type of expertise that they bring to the execution of our plan is completely different. But we try to anchor people's motivation and contribution around a specific narrative that is coherent, that serves mostly to align people's contribution. And I think that is essential. I think when the challenges are really, really big, and the complexity. Also, you have to anchor the contribution of each individual around a specific narrative in which they are able to identify a specific portion of their responsibility. If not, it's a complete mess. It's very hard, really, to address the translation and the intersection and the frontier between each individual member contribution.
Okay, I think this is a great contribution. The power of the narrative, right? If we might not be able to communicate all the details, and we might speak different languages, but if we identify with a common narrative, a common simple narrative, for a product, for a challenge, for a specific idea, for a challenge, then this might be an important tool to overcome the limitations of communication between technical fields and between the broader universe that we work on. What is your strategies and the positions you hold today, the type of work you do? It's incredible. How can you address all these different actors which have completely different ideas and ways of communication? How do you survive? What is your strategy on that?
Yes, as I told, it takes many times, and first we have the will to build together, because it is the only solution. We don't have another solution. We are obliged to do this together. So that is the first point, and then it takes time and also money, because we have to be together in the same place, and there is an experimental part of the Tele Epidemiology, and that is very important because we can have human relationship, and that is very part of the success, maybe. Time, money, as I said, and also, yes.
Okay. So if we want to address global challenges, then they're very interdisciplinary, and we have someone in your position. We need to give them a bit of time and a bit of money. Maybe not that much time, because apparently resiliency has to be quick to adapt to these changes. But obviously, quick is relative, and there are problems that, fortunately, we can still survive a while. We need to take care of our planet and climate change, hopefully as quickly as possible. But maybe we can still afford the time and money, hopefully, to address that problem. I mean, this is a stark contrast, and we're reaching the end. But I still want to challenge one of our guests. This is a stark contrast to what we just felt in the last 2 years, where we were had to come up with miracle solutions out of the box for a dramatic pandemic, and everyone just started helping or trying to help and risking, because they're quick in resilience means really quick. And so I'll possibly the final thing we have time to discuss, but I'll move to Arlindo, because Arlindo was working on that, was developing data science, and we still haven't explicitly included here the health actors, the health professionals, etc. But Arlindo is essentially doing data science for health professionals. I mean, of course, the general audience, it's very keen and which is very nice. They want to be informed, they want to understand, but we're talking about possibly very relevant tools that help doctors make their sometimes daily decisions, sometimes their global health policies regarding a serious situation. So, and you showed a few maps, you showed a few numbers. What was the challenge of producing an information that first health professionals could understand, and then, of course, the general public could understand? How was this challenge?
So in this particular project, we cooperated with health professionals, and they were very useful in helping us set the framework and defining the right indicators, the right objectives, and so on. But actually, since it was essentially manipulating a data set that was very clear to everyone. I mean, the incidence rate, the infection risk was something that even the man on the street knows about. the communication challenge here was not very strong. But we have a number of other projects where we cooperate with health professionals and where we try and where we apply machine learning methods mostly to different problems in cardiology, in brain sciences, and so on. And there the challenge is actually to build enough confidence and trust between the two groups, so that both groups understand a little bit, just a little bit of the other's field, and that we can communicate enough so that we can use the skills from everyone. This sometimes takes years, right? We have corporations that take like 4 or 5 years to take off because in the beginning people simply don't understand what the others are referring to or are saying. So we are all, in modern society, we are all very deep specialists. So, things that are trivial to us are completely opaque to other fields. And this is, of course, symmetrical, right? Things that we work with neurologists and the things now after 3 years of cooperation, we start to understand what they say in some respect. We are working on the improving the diagnostics of stroke. But it takes years. So I think it takes actually a lot of effort for academics, but also for other people, to put this effort in understanding and getting to know a little bit about the distant fields, sometimes distant fields, in order to proceed. So I think this is really a challenge, but as I said, I think this is really important because most of the most satisfying results I've had in research are not in specific contributions in a particular field, like a small advancement of a particular field in computer science, which is my own field, but were results from things that I could even consider relatively low-hanging fruit between different fields. But to catch that low-hanging fruit, we had to put a lot of effort. Maybe it was not so low, but we had to put a lot of effort in dialoguing with other people, establishing confidence between the groups, understanding the vocabulary of very different areas. And I think we all need to learn that, because it's not just climate change. There are a lot of challenges, biodiversity, a lot of other environmental problems that are not strictly related with climate change. Also the energy, of course, is related with climate change, but the energy is a challenge by itself, and it's also a very interdisciplinary field. So food. It includes things from everyone, from data science to agriculture. So I think all these, actually, I don't think there is any big challenge now that does not require strong interdisciplinary cooperation. And I think those are the challenges that we want to address.
Thank you, Arlindo. I think that's a nice phrase to wrap up. There's no big challenge, no large challenges, important challenges that today does not require interdisciplinarity. So before I thank all our guests, I was trying to do the very difficult job of scribbling some take-home messages obtained by the 4 interventions and the very nice discussion that we had. And I have some quick notes to summarize these. So resilience, we established that resilience requires broad interdisciplinary, not just technical, but broad, and it's usually not enough, but it's necessary, but not enough. We have to do additional things. And now the phrase by Arlindo, most global challenges, maybe all, let's be arrogant and say all global challenges require this interdisciplinary. However, as we didn't have enough time to go to the details, but please check the slides because there's a lot of nice examples there. Communication is one of the potential barriers to achieving this interdisciplinarity. The fact that we speak different languages might hinder this needed factor to handle global challenges, right? And so we had, I think, a really nice example here from Rui, and a powerful phrase, the power of the narrative, right? If maybe we don't need to all speak the same language, but we need to believe in the same idea and make the efforts to address it, because then, like Mireille wraps up, for achieving that, we need time, money, a lot of other things. Maybe I'll summarize all of that in patience, okay? We need patience to be able to communicate and patience to handle the challenges because they're global, they're important, they're relevant. We all want to live in a nice, healthy place in the future, and this is the way we're trying to work for that. So thank you very much for the 4 participants who are here with me, Michael, Carol, Arlindo, at the distance, but very, very present and very active in this discussion. Thank you all, and this wraps up our roundtable on health and open space for scientific interdisciplinary. A round of applause for these 4 guests, please.
Thank you everyone for this exciting discussion. We will now have a short break of 20 minutes. For those of you joining us at PhilP, feel free to check our coffee break downstairs. From afterwards, we will start our masterclasses. Live from PhilP, we'll be welcoming John Davis from the Barcelona Supercomputer Center for a premium masterclass on HPC, short for High Performance Computing. In parallel, other exclusive digital masterclasses with top-notch speakers will be available to those who have registered earlier before. You should have received by now a link to the class you've chosen to attend. Join your session at 4 p.m. Lisbon time and take this opportunity to engage with our speakers. They'll be happy to address any questions you may have. We hope this conference is a learning experience to all.